I was just uninvited from a wedding that had already started. Am I overreacting? Today, my partner and I were invited to the wedding of one of his oldest friends from school. We received our save the date months ago, and the invite was addressed to Eric and Vicky. Our invite stated we were invited for the whole shebang, the service, the breakfast, and the evening reception. Our RSVP required both of our dietary requirements for the breakfast, which we replied to ages ago. I thought this was pretty awesome and generous of the bride and groom, as I had never met either of them, and Eric was only close with the bride, so it was a very nice gesture. The wedding is a few hours away from where we live, and since neither of us drive, I booked train tickets in advance, which came to about £60 each return, and an Airbnb, which worked out at £90 between us. We don't earn a lot, so this is quite a big spend to justify. However, since they had invited us to the whole wedding, we thought it would be rude not to go. The bride also specified colors we should wear, so I bought a new outfit since I didn't have anything formal that would be suitable. Not the end of the world, but with Christmas coming up, it was a bit difficult and I had to be really frugal all through November to make it work. Total spend was probably double what I would spend monthly on fun. Stuff like going out for dinner or drinks or new clothes. We got to the service and it was beautiful. The bride looked lovely and it was very emotional. I get nervous at weddings, couldn't say why, and so I hadn't eaten beforehand, figuring the 4-course breakfast would fill me up nicely. After the ceremony, we went straight into the venue to have drinks and sit down at tables. We were towards the back of the line into the venue, and so half the congregation had already sat down. We glanced at the seating plan, saw Eric's name, and headed over. There was no place setting for me. Eric found his name, but there weren't any free seats at the table. Eric sat down, and I asked an usher whether there was a mistake. He didn't know, so he waved over the bride. She and I had never met before, but she seemed friendly until she opened her mouth. "Oh no, you're not part of the breakfast. The invitation was just for the reception and service. You're welcome to come back later." This was in front of most of the guests who had already sat down in a big venue, probably 140-ish seats. The usher suggested I go to the pub. Eric didn't know what to do, but didn't want to cause a scene, so he stayed put and quiet. I quite literally have never felt so embarrassed and humiliated in my life. I left, and it was raining heavily. Hadn't brought an umbrella since it was an indoor wedding, and being in a rural place, I had to walk about 20 minutes to get anywhere else. The usher had suggested a pub where the other guests are, so I just kept walking, but my shoes were literally ruined and soaked through, as well as being pretty damn cold because it's December and I was dressed for a wedding. Get to the pub to find a handful of merrymakers drinking heavily at 2 p.m. in wedding clothes, introduced myself kind of awkwardly as they were total strangers, and they were luckily really nice. They invited me to sit with them and tell them about the service. All of them had only been invited to the reception. I asked one of them if I could see their invite, and it was crystal clear that they were evening guests. There was no mention of the service or the breakfast, nor their dietary requirements. I apparently was the only person who was invited and then uninvited to the whole do. I sat with them and had some food because I was starving, but they all started leaving to get ready at about 4 p.m. Being a total stranger, I didn't think it best to ask to come with them, but I had never been to this town before, and besides Eric, I didn't know anybody. Since being ejected at 1:30 p.m.-ish, I was expected to just hang until 7:30 a.m. when the reception started. So I left. I feel so unwelcome and unwanted that I just wanted to go home. The evening do will start in about half an hour without me, but I just can't bring myself to attend, knowing that half the guests watched me being asked to leave by the bride herself. I traded in my train ticket, which was a return for tomorrow, and now I'm traveling back alone. I texted Eric to tell him, but he didn't respond. I've been holding back tears since I was ejected 6 hours ago, and I feel completely torn. I don't understand what happened with the invite, whether it was a mistake or whether I was just supposed to know that it was only for Eric, despite being addressed to both of us, despite asking for both of our dietary requirements, despite explicitly stating we were invited to the whole wedding. Part of me feels like I should have gone to the evening reception too, but I'm soaked through. My hair and makeup look awful. My shoes are unwearable. I am barefoot on a really gross floor right now, and I'm freezing. I look a mess, and I feel so stupid. Did I mess up here? I feel like I've just been totally messed over, and I'm really upset that Eric didn't stand up for me, or say anything, or leave the breakfast with me. Although I think that's less because of malice, and more that he's just a bit hopeless when put on the spot. I've never heard of a wedding where you invite a plus one by name, but then they aren't invited to as much of the wedding as the other half of the couple. Nobody else at the wedding had this happen. I don't see how it can be personal since I've never met any of them before. I'm really upset and can't wrap my head around how weird today has been. If this happened to you, what would you do? Now for a few important comments. Plain Truthiness said, the person who messed up was the bride, who is an utter word I don't use, but she is, and Eric, who is appalling. I absolutely cannot believe that he didn't walk out with you. What the hell was he thinking? Did he used to date the bride or the bride's sister? Then OP replied, funny you say that. The maid of honor is his ex, although we were not aware until we saw her name in the wedding booklet at the ceremony that she would even be there. However, there is a lot of bad blood between them. If she was going to intervene to remove anybody, it would have been him. Now for the 10-day update, edit. So this blew up way more than I expected. Thank you everyone for your words of support. It's really helped, and I've gone from a wobbly wet mess to a cackling harpy with my big glass of wine. You guys don't hold back on your opinions, and I kind of love it. It's now nearly bedtime here. Eric stayed at the party and presumably is still there. I came home and feel a lot better for knowing how shitty a situation this was. Karma's a witch, and when they go low, we go high. So I'm gonna go to bed and sleep on it and think about next steps in the morning. A lot of people think I should dump Eric, whereas that had never crossed my mind. I was mostly pissed off with the bride and the MOH who may have been involved too. I don't know. Eric will be coming home sometime tomorrow, and we're gonna talk. I want to hear his piece because he's been drinking since lunchtime. He might just be a dum-dum rather than a full-blown jerk. Either way, no wind-up sudden decisions right now. I will try and come back and update as and when anything else happens. Thanks, everyone. I went to a wedding of my boyfriend's oldest friend from school and got uninvited from the wedding breakfast as it was starting. My boyfriend stayed at the wedding. I hadn't expected the big reaction to my first post, and just want to say thank you to everyone who gave advice and was supportive. I was feeling super shitty when I initially posted, and after an hour of drinking wine and reading your comments, I felt a lot more sane and calm. I wanted to clarify a few things that people were confused about or that weren't clear in my first post. I'm in the UK, and our weddings are different to the way weddings are held in the US. Traditionally, there is a ceremony, the wedding breakfast, which is a sit-down 3-course meal, followed by speeches and then an evening reception, which is like a disco. It's not uncommon for people to invite only relatives and close friends to the ceremony and breakfast, then invite lots of evening guests for the reception. However, it is uncommon to invite somebody to the ceremony and reception, but not the breakfast, as then they are kind of left to entertain themselves somewhere for 6 hours. Having talked to friends and coworkers since last weekend, what happened to me was a serious no-no in terms of etiquette. Eric and I have been together for nearly a year and a half. We live together, and we have a pretty strong relationship. He had no past romantic connections with the bride, Marie. They went to school together from the age of 4 to 10 and remained in touch as pen pals, Facebook friends since then. They rarely see each other in person, and the wedding was the first time he would see her in about 2 years. There was zero phone signal at the venue. We noticed this when we arrived for the ceremony, and were a little annoyed as the wedding had a hashtag which we couldn't exactly tweet about with no signal. This is important later. We didn't know this until we arrived at the wedding, but the maid of honor, Helen, was Eric's ex-girlfriend. They were together for 3 years, and she cheated on him and dumped him. They have a lot of bad blood and do not have any contact with each other. Okay, so on to the update. After leaving the ceremony, I got straight on the train and went back to my hometown. When I got home, I told my parents everything, and they weren't particularly impressed. And like most of the posters here, they were perplexed that Eric hadn't come with me. My mom gave me a big hug, ran me a bath, and poured me a glass of wine. And I just tried to relax and forget about my day from hell. I still hadn't heard from Eric, but texted him to let him know I was home safe and would see him tomorrow. Eric texted me back at about 9 p.m., asking me what I meant by home, or the Airbnb that we had booked nearby to the venue. I clarified, and he said, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Love you so much, X." Didn't really know what to make of it since the whole day had just been such a massive mess, so I finished my wine, watched a Disney movie, and went to bed. The next morning, given I still hadn't really heard from Eric at all, I assumed he would be getting in at about midday, so I got up early and started wrapping Christmas presents. At 8 a.m., I heard a key in the door, and what do you know, it's Eric, still in his creased suit with red eyes and looking like death. He wasn't really making sense, so I made him have a shower and warm up, made coffee, and decided to talk once he was looking human again. We sat down together and pieced together his side of the story. Basically, once I had left, Eric was absolutely livid with Marie. He had frozen like a deer in headlights when she was asking me to go and was kicking himself that he hadn't done the right thing. About 10 minutes after I left, Marie turned around and said, "Oh, actually, a few people haven't turned up. Get Vicky to come back. We have space for her now." And Eric had tried to call me. Because there was no phone signal anywhere near the venue, he couldn't get through. And Marie pretty much immediately said, "Oh well, never mind. She didn't want to be here anyway," which obviously was a pile of crap and made Eric feel rubbish. The meal was a very formal, sit-down affair, so he just kind of grinned and bared it, assuming I would be coming back in the evening. Eric was the only person mentioned in the speeches by Marie's father, who wasn't a family member, and apparently it was clear to everyone how disappointed he was that I wasn't there to share it with him. When I texted him at about 6 p.m. to let him know I was going home, he never received it. He was only able to text me at 9 p.m. by hiking down the road for 5 minutes to find a signal. All the while, his ex Helen was being sickly sweet, asking where I was. Why didn't I want to come and enjoy the party? Was I shy? Apparently with quite the evil glint in her eye, like she had got exactly what she'd wanted. Neither of us knew she was the MOH until we got there. And given their bad relationship, Eric was pretty pissed off that Marie had failed to mention she had such a prominent role in the wedding. Whether Helen was behind the seating error, I don't know. But if she was, then Marie was just as bad in enabling it to happen. So Eric stayed at the wedding, miserably, and went back to the Airbnb afterwards alone. He barely slept, feeling angry at Marie and Helen for messing with us and at himself for not sticking up for me, and left at 4:30 a.m. to get the first train home, hence why he was back at our place so early. He wasn't really apologetic to me at all. He didn't really seem to see how it was bad for me. He more felt like he had been insulted by the situation and let down by his oldest friend. He is cutting off Marie and doesn't want anything else to do with her. So, yeah. That was Eric's take on the whole thing. To be honest, I was pretty upset that in all of this, he hadn't really considered how I felt or what it had been like for me getting thrown out of the wedding. While what he had gone through was pretty crummy, he at least had been warm, dry, and well-fed. The indignation of your girlfriend being removed from an event you're at isn't really as bad as being the girlfriend, getting soaked in the rain, feeling humiliated, and all the rest. So, we talked, and I laid out why I wasn't okay with what had happened and why his reaction wasn't okay. He can be a bit of a lemon sometimes, and this feels like one of those times. He didn't step up to the plate. He just let the world wash over him and acted as a bystander. I'm still hurt by his actions, and he still hasn't really apologized properly. I don't know if he understands that he did wrong too. But this isn't a deal breaker for me. It's a heavy straw on the camel's back. But the camel is still standing. We have a really lovely Christmas coming up. And after a really long autumn of working hard, all I want is to go back to the happy place we were before this mess. And honestly, I don't want to think about it. So I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. I'm not going to break up with him over this, but it's a big dark mark on his record. As far as I'm concerned, he needs to get a lot of extra credit to get a pass this year. And I expect him to step up and really try to do better from now on. It's not really an ultimatum, but I'm willing to put this behind us if he can prove to me that he's invested and trying harder in this relationship from now on. If he doesn't, then I won't be sticking around. I love him a lot, but he needs to have my back and be empathetic to what I'm going through. I'm sorry that this wasn't the victorious breakup update so many of you wanted, but I want a nice, happy Christmas together. I'm not ruling it out as an option if things don't improve, but I want to give him another chance to prove this relationship is worth it. Now for a top comment. Throw the Switch said, things to think about. If Marie said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he come and physically find you after his call didn't go through? If Marie said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he go and find signal to call you 5 minutes away after his call didn't go through? Why didn't he try and find signal to call you again, only 5 minutes away until 9 p.m.? Now for a few relevant comments. It's all mine now commented. So, I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. Yeah, that's the important thing. You haven't lost him. And as for dragging you over coals, you're going to be the one to live with this selfish, conceited carpet. So really, there's nothing more I can add that would push the point home more than some more occasions where he just dumps you at the side of the road because he's offended by how they disrespected him by treating you badly. Throw the Switch's comment makes a good point. He didn't even try to catch you up, go down the road to contact you, or even leave in disgust, because all he could think about was his own hurt feelings. You've got a great life coming. Then OP replied, I have set a deadline in my head where I need to see significant improvement in a few areas of the relationship, which I have told him is important if he wants us to stay together. And if that doesn't happen, I'm gone. If he messes up big time before then, I'm gone. Just giving him one last chance to pull himself up by his bootstraps and prove it's worth staying for. Am I the idiot for my husband ending our marriage over my college threesomes? My husband of 2 years found out some unsavory details about my past, and I'm scared it could lead to divorce. I'll try and keep this short. We've known each other 5 years, been married for 2 years, and up until last weekend, things were perfectly fine. Maybe once in a while we'd bicker about money or something, but 99% of the time we were happy together. While out last weekend for a friend's birthday, a now ex-friend of mine told my husband about a relationship I had in college. My husband knew about my college boyfriend, but obviously I didn't share intimate details about our intimacy life. Well, it came out that I used to engage in threesomes with him and his male roommate. Probably 12 to 15 in total, but all my husband knows is that it was more than once. College was a totally different time in my life. I was drinking every weekend, doing recreational drugs every month, partying, having casual flings, just like everyone else at that age. It was a hedonistic, live-for-today lifestyle that I thankfully grew out of. I look back on those years with a lot of regrets, and not just about my intimacy life. I mean, it was 10 plus years ago. I'm a totally different person now. Regardless, I know my husband sees me in a totally different light. He hasn't slept in our bed since he found out, and he's barely spoken to me all week. I'm so scared he'll divorce me. I'm walking on eggshells just trying to stay out of his way while he works through this. I really want to sit him down and clear the air. I just don't know where to begin. I feel like one slip of the tongue and our relationship could be completely over. I know I'm not a good person for keeping this from him, so please don't lecture me. It was a chapter of my life I thought I'd closed for good. It was my one secret, and I honestly debated telling him about it, but came to the conclusion that no positive outcome could come from it. Now for a few comments. One commenter said, "People don't change that much." It could be that he just simply knows more about how you view intimacy now, and it may not be compatible with his own views. Pulling a three-way with two dudes 10 to 15 times? That's a whole lot of sucking and freaking. It shows a lot about how you like to be treated and what you crave. I honestly don't blame him for being creeped out about that. Then the original poster replied, "Most times there was drugs or alcohol involved. It's not something I'd ever want to do at this age. Like I said, it was a lifetime ago." Another commenter asked, "Is your husband upset that you used to be sexually adventurous because he has a moral problem with it? Or is it because you are not sexually adventurous with him?" And I don't just mean having threesomes. I mean fun, passionate intimacy. The original poster responded, "He's never complained about our intimacy life." I didn't want to go into explicit detail, but people are asking, and it's an anonymous account, so here it goes. "My main limitation is that I won't do butt stuff, which I know he enjoys. It's just not pleasurable and often painful for me. I don't like him releasing on my face, body is fine, and me is fine. And not that he's ever asked. I'm done with group intimacy for good." Then another commenter stated, "Honestly, I don't think you've done anything wrong. And if this, something that occurred when he wasn't in your life whatsoever, is a deal breaker for him, then you are better off. He's being a childish idiot about it. The past was meant to stay in the past, and I don't believe you were obligated to talk to him about your intimacy exploits with previous partners. The way he is acting is ridiculous. I understand he may be bothered by it, but wow, handle it like a man, dude." To which the original poster replied, "I'm not better off without him. This is the man I love. We've built a life together. A divorce would completely ruin my life." When asked how her husband found out the information, the original poster explained, "He was talking to an old friend of mine on a night where we were all drinking. My friend claims it was a drunken slip of the tongue, but she has a history of pulling shoot like this. I'm 100% done with her. I no longer consider her a friend." The original poster added, "No, I came to Reddit because I'm looking to save my marriage and don't want to discuss this with friends' family." Now for the 2-day update. As of this morning, we still hadn't slept in the same bed or spoken more than 10 words to each other in passing. As I was waking up, he was walking in the front door with 2 coffees. He sat me down at our kitchen table and finally opened up to me. Basically, he feels that he was conned, his word, into the marriage, saying that he wouldn't have even dated me, let alone married me, if he'd known what he knows now. His view of me has been irreparably changed, and he no longer sees me as someone worthy of being his wife. Beyond the intimacy aspect, he says he no longer trusts me because I kept something this big from him our whole relationship. Nothing I could do or say could convince him that these were past mistakes and not reflective of who I am today. He wasn't angry with me, didn't call me an intimacy lover or anything like that, never once raised his voice. Part of me wishes he did, although I can't exactly say why right now. It felt like I was being laid off from a job. So that's it. We are getting divorced. My supposed life partner turning his back on me without a second thought. He didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me first. Apparently, he visited his lawyer during the week, and the process is in motion, his words. Knowing him, there is absolutely no changing his mind. My husband owns multiple businesses and wouldn't get married without a prenup. I signed it, honest to God, thinking we'd never, ever have to use it. Well, he had the document with him this morning. He said he'd pay off the remainder of my student loans, which he isn't legally obligated to do. While I appreciate that, I am going to meet with my lawyer this week and see if the agreement can be challenged in court. We have built a life together. I gave him 5 of the best years of my life, and I've been 100% faithful to him. I don't deserve to be tossed out like a piece of trash. So that's it. My life turned upside down in the span of a week over something I did 10 plus years ago before I even knew him. It's asinine. The thing is, even as I wrote the original post, in the back of my mind, I knew he was through with me. He's ended friendships and business partnerships over less. Now for a few comments. One commenter asked, "I'm curious, Why are you looking to challenge the prenup in court? Do you feel that you have a right to his assets or money from his businesses? Or are you just being a vengeful person? Were you an investor or founding member of any of these projects with him? Were you instrumental in their development and success in any material way? Don't give me this emotional support crap. The whole time you were supposedly emotionally supporting him, he was using the proceeds from his businesses to provide for you. That's the deal in a marriage. Now that the marriage is ending, the monetary support from his businesses is going to be cut off from you. He's being generous by offering to pay off your loans. It sounds like you're just being a spiteful person looking to suck as much of his money as the legal system will allow. Another commenter responded, "It's within her rights to contest it, and the courts will decide whether she has a case or not." All right, let's get started with the post. Exactly. What do I have to lose? To protect his fragile ego, I have to start my life over at square one. I'll probably have to move in with my parents. I don't even know if I'll have a car by summer. I get why he's mad. I totally get it. He just didn't even give us a chance. He doesn't know our relationship won't work out. He didn't even try. He freaking ran to his lawyer and exercised a contingency agreement without even talking to me. He's taking the coward's way out, and it destroys my life in the process. Now for a comment from Macaroni and Milk. I seriously don't know what the frick is going on in this thread, where the top voted comments are about how it's all on you because you're a freaking liar. This is the same subreddit that will tell most posters that their intimacy past is no one else's business, barring diseases or intimacy work. Maybe these people only read your update and assumed you hid both of those from him? I don't know. Either way, you did nothing wrong. If your intimacy past was such a big deal for him, he should have asked you some questions, not just assumed you were some pure little angel living in a bubble just waiting for this one specific man to come whisk you away. If having an intimacy past is a deal breaker and he didn't question you, that's on him, not you. Lawyer up, make the split, and go find some guy who won't judge you for actions that happened 15 years ago and have no bearing on him whatsoever. Then the original poster replied, "Never said I was a virgin. We met when I was like 25, come on." Anytime I mentioned an ex-boyfriend, not sexually, just in conversation, like, "Oh, I went to destination with ex-boyfriend," he'd get pissy and unhappy. He never came out and said it, but I could tell it made him uncomfortable. So early on in our relationship, I made the conscious decision to stop talking about my past boyfriends completely. Am I the idiot for blaming my landlord for a blood trail in my room, only to find out it was black mold? I am a man, and so I don't get a period. I have been living on my own in Amsterdam for a while now. It's a nice little room in the attic. It's old, nice, and feels very cozy. I don't live in a dorm, but I live with an older lady who has 2 cats. I'm allergic myself, so when those cats come this way, I chase them out the door. Now I have a problem. A few days ago, I woke up with clothes on, my closet turned over, and clothes on the floor. Sleepwalking can happen. Now things are getting a little weird. On the entire left side of my double bed, from head to toe, there is a long trail of blood, as if something bloody has been running over it. This can't be the cats because they don't come into my room at night, and it also seems unlikely to me that an injured animal has been walking there, because if something bleeds that much, it should be visible somewhere else in the room, right? It also seemed unlikely to me that I myself bled a vertical trail in my sleep, but I didn't think anything else of it. I cleaned it up, and that was that. But this morning, a few days later, I wake up, blood everywhere again on that side of the bed. And with blood everywhere, I really mean a trail you can't miss. And the smell? I woke up because of the smell and not even my alarm clock. I went to ask the housewife what she thinks this could be. She smiled for a moment and said, "Maybe your room is haunted." Well, that didn't make it better. I'm now sitting in the bathroom scrubbing that sheet again and trying not to throw up. I don't know what's going on here, but could this be a weird hazing problem? And by that I mean student hazing. Is this a normal thing they do in Amsterdam? Smear blood on your bed? I'm just saying, I'm from Brussels. I know there are weirder things happening here. I don't get it at all, especially because I've scanned my whole body and there are no wounds anywhere. Has anyone experienced something similar? Is my room genuinely possessed? Sorry if this is a stupid question, but I'm kind of done with it. Now for a few important comments. One commenter suggested that someone might have bled from their ears, which is not often visible as a wound. They advised getting ears checked and placing a camera for reassurance. I responded, I'm definitely going to do that. Good idea. I'll ask the doctor right after class today to schedule an appointment. Another commenter recommended getting a carbon monoxide meter due to symptoms like nausea and smelling things that aren't there, which could be related to carbon monoxide poisoning. I replied, I'm pretty scared of this now. Just check the symptoms online and they do match. I'm going straight to the hardware store after class, starting to get nervous about this, haha. A different commenter suggested bed bugs might be the cause as they could be rolled flat in sleep after feeding. I said, yuck, it's on the comforter though. Don't think I roll over them, but could have been an answer. Another commenter noted the change of clothes overnight and asked if there were other weird things that morning besides blood. I explained, yes, different clothes than what I went to bed with. I go to sleep in my pajamas, logical, and I woke up with my sweater and jeans on. I have never sleepwalked before. This morning only blood, thank God. Otherwise, I would have scheduled an appointment with the psychologist. Now for the update a few days later. For the past few days, I've been staying at my friend's house to see if it's mysteriously bleeding there too. I ordered a camera and nothing happened. Until yesterday morning. I went back home, went to the doctor on the way because I suffer from hay fever, and once home just checked the cats for being in heat. Turns out they're both male, unfortunately. I set up the camera in a can and went into the space behind my room with a CO detector to measure it. The second I got in there, I smelled a very familiar smell, exactly the smell that vaguely smelled like blood. Now that I know what it is, I would associate it more with meat, but the smell of blood came very close. Anyway, grabbed the CO detector, shirt in front of my nose, and put that thing to work. Nothing wrong. Anyway, called my friend because the smell was very specific. She was there within an hour, and she too thought it smelled very strangely of blood. It's a large attic, which smells of blood and rotted flesh, and there are things everywhere in the dark. Of course, my imagination ran wild. My girlfriend also started to get the jitters, and after an hour of pondering, we decided to call the police. Well, they showed up on my doorstep after 4 hours, and together we went upstairs. The police also smelled the odor, and it was so convincing that some other special agents were called in before they went up into the attic. Very long story short, after a long wait and search, they didn't find a body, but they did find mold. All over the wall against my room, under the baseboards, in the roof, black mold everywhere. Immediately relieved that my landlord wasn't a unaliver, but black mold isn't a fun joke either. In the meantime, I've moved all my stuff and am temporarily living with my girlfriend until the problem is solved. Even then, I don't know if I'll go back because the landlord wasn't very happy that I kind of suspected her of unalive. But that's another story. It's funny because as the doctor said when I came in with my hay fever, it's remarkable that you're suffering from it now. He was right. The itchy eyes, the nosebleed in my sleep. Yes, it turned out to be a nosebleed. The sleepwalking, the tired days, everything in place. End of story. I do want to thank you all individually for your kind messages and earnest attempts to help. Thanks to you, I went behind the room to check that meter. I wonder if I would have found out about the fungus if I hadn't. Thanks so much, really.